set to shut down Friday of this week unless Congress can pass a spending bill. Republicans in Congress seem like they're about to do that. They say they are. So what's in the deal? Well, probably not a lot of what you voted for in 2016. The final bill is expected to spend $1.3 trillion. That'll, of course, dramatically increase the deficit. What it won't do is provide a single dollar for the border wall, even though the president got elected, as you may remember, on a pledge to build one. The law will not pull funding from sanctuary cities, even though those cities are deliberately acting to sabotage federal law. On the other hand, the spending bill would continue to give hundreds of millions of tax dollars to abortion promoter and Democratic Party's stalwart Planned Parenthood, whose director spoke at the Democratic convention. The Republican Party, of course, promised to defund Planned Parenthood not so long ago. Meanwhile, the priorities of this Congress seem to be set by the Democratic Party rather than by the parties supposedly in charge. Democrats have defined the terms of the immigration debate from day one and still are. Now they're doing the same on gun control. So how should Republican voters feel about all of this? Britt Hume has watched a lot of Congresses come and go. That's why he's our senior political analyst at Fox, and he joins us now. Britt, is there a concern that Republican voters will look at this and be disappointed, or will they be so afraid of Democrats that they'll be motivated to vote anyway?
Well, Tucker, I'm not sure that's quite the choice. I'm sure Republican voters will be disappointed with this, but this is a very familiar pattern we're seeing here, and it comes down to this. It's a question of narrow majorities. In the United States Senate today, the Republican Party has the narrowest of majorities, and on most legislative measures, it takes 60 votes. That means you need Democrats. And right. Democrats, when it comes to a big measure like this, are going to stand by their sacred cows. They're going to stand by Planned Parenthood. They're going to try their best to get the DACA measure renewed. They're not going to get that, by the way, in this bill, but the president's not going to get his border wall funding either. So there you go. This is what happens with narrow majorities. If the Republicans had healthy majorities in both houses, they would be able to pass a bill that would contain all the priorities you cited and others as well, and the Democrats couldn't do a darn thing about it. Under these circumstances, however, they can't do that. It's just they don't have the votes.
Right. No, it's clear.
And when they try to...
It's clear they can't.
Sorry.
I just wonder, though, going into it, if maybe there wasn't overpromising. If people's expectations aren't met, it's just, if someone promises you a pony for Christmas and you get a bag of hair, you never get over it. And so why would they promise things that they couldn't deliver?
Well, it wasn't. Well, of course, in the course of an election campaign, you don't know how the election is going to turn out. You don't know whether you're going to end up with a small majority or a large majority or no majority at all. So you come out and you say, this is what I'm for. This is what I'm going to be trying to do. Now, of course, that always gets translated to this is what I will do. Believe me, Tucker, there are Democratic representatives and senators all over this country who went out and promised all kinds of things that they're not going to get either. That's how it is when government is divided like this, very narrowly, and it's not a pretty sight. I mean, it used to be back in the day, and it's been a long time actually since I've actually seen it work this way, when there'd be a series of funding bills that would be debated and voted on, and then then the two houses would get together and they'd try to resolve the differences, and there was a lot of bipartisan sentiment, and everybody would give a little to get a little, and you'd get but in this bitterly divided political atmosphere, the Congress is a reflection of the country. We have a very, very deeply divided nation, and the kind of gridlock you're seeing that leads to this kind of extravaganza, $1.3 trillion, is a result of that.
No, that's right. A lot of people don't believe in the system, too. So really quickly, you said that Democrats stand by their sacred cows, the things on which they will not move. What are those for Republicans? Right. What are the things they won't compromise on?
Well, here's one thing the Republicans are certainly going to get in this bill is a significant increase in defense spending, which they wanted for a long time. They had to swallow some. They've had to swallow some increases in domestic spending they might not have wanted, but they're going to get that. And obviously, they got their tax bill passed, and this bill will leave that undisturbed. They're not going to be able. And as of now, of course, Tucker, one of the great priorities that has defined the Republican Party going back a number of cycles has been the desire to get into the entitlement spending and reduce that, because that is the big driver of these staggering deficits and this massive national debt that we now face. But we have a president now who's not for that. And without that, obviously, you have no momentum behind that. So that's fallen by the wayside. But look, there are plenty of Republican priorities in this bill, no doubt about it. But I mean, I can't enumerate them all. But
it's a long bill.
There are anything this big, they're bound to be. And of course, remember this about this bill, Tucker. This is subject to the The same thing big bills always are. Big bills that have to pass, that is to say a bill that would keep the government open, people are going to try to attach whatever they've got to that bill to try to get, because they know it's going to get passed and signed into law.
That's right.
And so you get all kinds of ugly-looking ornaments hanging onto these things. Most of them get stripped out, but some of them get through. And when this bill is passed, we're going to find out more over a period of time of what's in it, and a lot of it nobody's going to like.
Some ugly ornaments. Well, we'll tell you what they are. Britt, thank you for that.
Okay, Tucker.
Congressman Steve King is in the Congress right now. He's a Republican, of course, from the state of Iowa, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, I thought Britt wisely said the two things that Republicans care about are tax cuts and military spending. Those are the two things they cared about in, 1986. Those are longstanding priorities. This election set a new agenda, I would say. Voters said, we want something a little different. And they're not getting any of that. The voters aren't getting any of the things that they thought they were going to get in 2016. Why is that?
Well, we don't think they're going to get them, and I'm disappointed by it, too. It's hard for me to imagine how we listen to a president campaign for all of those months and lay out a clear message, build the wall, end sanctuary cities, enforce immigration law, tighten up and restore the respect for the rule of law, end DACA, and it looks like none of that is going to be served up to us in this omnibus bill that's coming up.
Whose fault is that?
Well, part of it is, of course, the Democrats that have fought this, and that's just a given. But the other part is there's an element of the anti-Trumpers that wanted to deny President Trump the results, the fruits of his electoral victory. And we've got some people that are more establishment than they are conservatives, and they really didn't want to say no to illegal immigrants in America. I hear it inside our conference. They will argue for them and say they came here due to no fault of their own, and we need to give them a pass and a path to citizenship, and that destroys the rule of law. And for me, it's always been about restoring the rule of law, not destroying the rule of law.
So Planned Parenthood does, I think, about 0 mammograms.
0 is exactly the number.
They provide more abortions than anybody in America, and they're campaigning for Democrats. Why should taxpayers give them $500 million a year, and why do no Republicans ever push back against that?
Tucker, it's completely and utterly foolish for Republicans to continue to fund Planned Parenthood. Just the pushback from the Democrats. And by the way, several months ago, when this issue was before us, I had a Democrat. He happens to be a member of the Congressional Black Caucus and a pastor. And I told him that I wanted to defund Planned Parenthood, and I would draw the line. If it shut the government down, it shuts the government down. He said he's willing to shut the government down if we don't fund Planned Parenthood, and he's a pastor.
But, well, that's obviously, I think, grotesque. But leaving aside even the central question of abortion, if the Democratic Party gets to take $500 million in taxpayer funds to pay for its adjunct Planned Parenthood, are Republicans pushing for $500 million for NRA? Or for national right to work? I mean, how does that work? Why do taxpayers get to fund their campaign arm?
I think that there's a certain element that's afraid of Planned Parenthood's lobbying capacity. Of course, the more funds we put in there, the stronger that they can lobby. But you're right in this, about 350,000 abortions a year are Planned Parenthood. They do 0 mammograms, and they're drawing down $500 million a year. And I think it was Senator Joni Ernst that said at one point, if we can't defund Planned Parenthood, shame on us. And that's I would be willing to shut the government down to defund Planned Parenthood. I can't do that alone. If there's a strong coalition, I would say no funding. Let's find out. Let's find out what the American people want. If they are determined that we should borrow money from China in order to fund abortions in America, then let's find out. This is a place to draw the line.
Well, at least let's have the conversation.
Yeah.
No one ever says it. But you do. Congressman King, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me here, Tucker. Appreciate it.
We've got a breaking news alert for you. It looks like a 6th bomb blast may have just hit Austin, Texas. The Austin Fire and Police Departments are responding to another reported package explosion. Right now, 1 injury is being reported. A building is being evacuated. The overall severity of that blast is not known. Obviously, we're following this as closely as we can. We'll bring you details as we get them. 50 years ago, college students campaigned for free speech. Now they say something called diversity is more important than the First Amendment. What does that mean, and where's it going? Ann Coulter joins us next.
To Ted Kennedy.